I can't get past that everybody skips by in this whole thing is I had a former campaign election guy on my show who was really learned in all of this. And he said, the only way that you can prove it's an actual campaign donation, in order to help your campaign, which is what they're alleging in this, is if the money would never, under any circumstances, have ever been paid for anything other than to support one's campaign.
Right. And so anything that people might do, even if they're not running for office, doesn't count. So people pay money. For example, they pay divorce attorneys to try to seal up their divorce records so that those don't become an embarrassment of the campaign. Right. Their purpose may be to influence the campaign, but it's an expenditure that somebody who wasn't running for office might also make. The only things that count are things that come directly out of the fact that you're campaigning.
So a hush money payment to a woman saying, I'm going to go public with our affair would not qualify because there have been lots of men, rich and powerful in particular, who have paid that money time and time again. So unless you could prove that the only reason he would have done it was to help his 2016 campaign, you fail that test, and that's what's going to happen here.
That's for the felony. Yes, that's for the felony. Yeah, and look, and on that one, I agree. I don't think it's going to be easy. That's why I kept focusing on the misdemeanor, because it's the tougher, it's the tougher question. There's wrongdoing here, right? There was definitely wrongdoing. Whether it should have been a crime is a separate. What's the wrongdoing? What's the wrongdoing? All right, number one, it's paying $130,000 to a porn star to keep her quiet. That's to try to protect your campaign. Can we at least agree that's wrong?
That's not illegal. Is if the money would never, under any circumstances, have ever been paid for anything other than to support one's campaign. So a hush money payment to a woman saying, I'm going to go public with our affair would not qualify because there have been lots of men, rich and powerful in particular, who have paid that money time and time again. So unless you could prove that the only reason he would have done it was to help his 2016 campaign, you fail that test, and that's what's going to happen here.
That's for the felony. Yes, that's for the felony. Yeah, and look, and on that one, I agree. I don't think it's going to be easy. That's why I kept focusing on the misdemeanor, because it's the tougher, it's the tougher question.
Illegal.
Can we at least agree that's wrong?
That's not illegal. It's not
I didn't say it was. No. I just said moral versus legal.
How is it wrong? Are we talking moral?
I made it clear. I'm making it clear. For a minute, I'm talking about morality versus legality, right? There's no doubt that he engaged in.
All right, I'll tell. Here's my response to that, and I said this on my show the other day. I don't know what kind of weird marriage these two have.
But I'm not talking about the sex. I'm talking about the $130,000 to keep her quiet to protect his campaign.
Immoral. There's nothing wrong with that at all. Nothing.
Really? Okay. Look, again,
if somebody runs for office, they just lose the right to have any privacy. They just have to let us see all of their dirty laundry from the moment they declare forward, or somehow they've done something morally wrong or legally wrong.
When you're doing it to protect the campaign and you are spending money on it, then now I'm going to switch back to the legal. You are now crossing the line into legal problems.
He was paying his lawyer who had made the payment to Stormy Daniels, and he was, I believe, reimbursing her, though he denied that, reimbursing him, though he denied that on the stand. I don't think there's anything wrong with doing that. I think you pay your lawyer money because he outlaid money for you. You could easily classify that as a legal expense.
No matter what it's for, right? Even if it's illegal conduct, you can just put it's a legal expense, right?
This wasn't illegal. There's nothing illegal about paying hush money for an NDA. It's done
There's not.
all the time.
But when you're doing it to protect your campaign, it is. That's the difference.
No. What law are you citing, Dan?
Campaign finance laws. You're not allowed to give the...
You don't know what you're talking about.
What are you talking... You're wrong. Explain to me.
Let me explain to you.
Tell me what I'm getting wrong. Tell me what I'm getting wrong. When you're spending $130,000...
I'll explain.
Go ahead.
I get it, because you're saying that there are limits to the campaign contributions somebody can make, and this has exceeded them, and then they hit it. I understand. That's his theory. However, this has been wrong from the start. It does not amount to a campaign contribution if it is the kind of payment that could ever be made outside of the campaign context.
That's not the standard. The standard is substantiality. It's not. It's substantiality.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
You're wrong.
Okay.
No, it's not.
I guess we're going to have to agree.
There's been Supreme Court precedent on this. Talk to Brad Smith, who was the FEC commissioner.
Court that the standard is substantiality. All right.
Wrong.
We'll have to agree to disagree on that.
The only way that you can prove it's an actual campaign donation in order to help your campaign, which is what they're alleging in this, is if the money would never, under any circumstances, have ever been paid for anything other than to support one's campaign.
Yep.
So unless you could prove that the only reason he would have done it was to help his 2016 campaign, you fail that test, and that's what's going to happen here.
That's for the felony, yes.
You were commissioner at the Federal Election Commission starting in 2000. You were chairman at one point. You graduated from Harvard Law School, and you were confirmed to the FEC in 2000. Prior to your appointment, you were a professor of law at Capital University in Columbus, Ohio. You taught election law. Matter of fact, you spent your whole life studying, teaching, and around election law. Is that correct?
Yes.
So I want to ask you a question. If there's an individual who makes a payment from their own pocket or from their own company, or they direct their private lawyer to make a payment, whom they later reimburse, even if they don't reimburse, also from the same funds, to enter into a non-disclosure agreement with an individual, involving alleged activity that preceded this individual's candidacy for any federal office. Is that a campaign contribution?
The short answer there is no.
And why not?
Well, it's not because it doesn't arise out of the campaign. And the key thing that you said there, Mark, is that this happened before the campaign was going on, the events that give rise to it. And under the Federal Election Campaign Act, anything one spends to influence a campaign can be deemed to be a contribution or expenditure under one part of the law. But the law contains other clauses that focus on what are not campaign expenditures and what is called personal use, and you can't convert your campaign funds to personal use. So what the courts and what the statute says very clearly, what the FEC has said in its regulations, is if something is not an expense that arises directly out of the campaign, for example, you rent an office for campaign headquarters, you hire a campaign manager, you pay for TV ads, you print up buttons and bumper stickers. Those are all things you're doing because you're running for office. But the fact that something helps your campaign doesn't make it a campaign expense. For example, I decide I'd look better on the campaign trail if I had my teeth whitened. Not a campaign expense. I want a new suit to look good at a debate. Not a campaign expense. Or to take something that's more relevant to what we've seen going on recently, you allude to sort of the Trump payments to some of these women who allege various affairs and so on. If I'm a successful businessman and I decide I want to run for office and I say, look, I've got all these lawsuits against me, as businessmen often do, against their companies and so on. These are all a bunch of BS, no merit to them, but I don't want them out there. I don't want people asking me about them. I don't want them dragging my campaign. Settle those lawsuits, I tell my lawyer. I can't pay those settlements with campaign funds. That's not a campaign expenditure. The obligation did not arise out of my running for office. So that's the long answer to your question. Short answer is the simple no. Paying somebody for something to be quiet about something that was done or alleged years before is not a campaign expense.
I am